like you. Be strong to hold the powers of the sun. To dream, believe in strength. Now I'm the only one.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Diorpop. Tonight, we're not just watching a BTS OT7 Weverse live, we're stepping into the emotions that quietly unfolded behind the smiles, laughter, and playful conversations shared on January 16, 2026. In a room filled with warmth and familiar faces, there was a moment where feelings spoke without words. As Jimin grew closer to Taehyung, Jungkook's heart reacted in ways the camera could never fully capture. This is a story about subtle glances, unspoken jealousy, and emotions that live quietly beneath the surface. That night was supposed to be simple. An OT7 Weverse live filled with warmth, laughter, and the familiar comfort of 7 people who had been home to millions for years. January 16, 2026, became another date fans would treasure, BTS sitting together, talking freely, teasing one another, and showing the relaxed sides everyone had missed. But behind the glowing screen and cheerful atmosphere, there was an emotion quietly unfolding. An emotion no one openly noticed. An emotion that lived only in Jungkook. From the very beginning of the live, the mood was lively. Taehyung sat comfortably, his voice warm and playful, his smile effortlessly charming. Jimin was beside him, laughing openly, his shoulder brushing against Taehyung's without hesitation. They leaned close as they talked, whispering to each other when another member spoke, as if a small world existed just between them. To most people it was nothing unusual. Completely normal. Completely harmless. But to Jungkook, something felt different. He sat not too far away, smiling at the camera, laughing at the right moments, responding to ARMY with his usual kindness. Yet his eyes, those eyes, kept drifting back to one place. To Jimin. To the way Jimin leaned toward Taehyung. To the soft laughter that escaped Jimin every time Taehyung said something teasing. To Taehyung's hand casually touching Jimin's arm as they joked. Each tiny detail felt like a quiet needle pressing into Jungkook's chest, never sharp enough for anyone else to notice, but enough to make his breathing feel tight. He tried to focus elsewhere. Reading comments. Nodding when Namjoon spoke. Smiling when Jin cracked a joke. But every time Jimin laughed a little longer than usual, every time Jimin leaned just a bit closer to Taehyung, Jungkook's jaw tightened without him realizing it. The hand resting loosely on his lap slowly curled into a fist. This wasn't the first time Jungkook had felt like this. He understood Jimin and Taehyung's bond better than anyone. They had been together since their trainee days, 2 souls connected by years of shared memories. Jungkook respected that. He always had. But tonight, for reasons he couldn't fully explain, the feeling was stronger. Maybe it was distance. Maybe it was unspoken longing. Or maybe it was fear. Fear of losing something precious, even if only inside his own thoughts. Then came the moment that made it all spill over. Taehyung said something that made Jimin burst into laughter, his head instinctively leaning against Taehyung's shoulder. It lasted only a second. Just a fleeting moment. But it was enough. The camera caught it. The comments section exploded. Jungkook swallowed hard, forcing his smile to stay in place as his gaze dropped for a brief second before returning to the screen. He shifted his body slightly, an unconscious attempt to move closer. A strong urge rose inside him, to pull Jimin back, to reclaim that invisible space, to remind himself that Jimin's place was not over there. Jungkook suddenly spoke up, his voice louder than usual, deliberately entering Jimin and Taehyung's conversation. Jimin turned toward him, eyes widening slightly before softening into a familiar, gentle smile. That smile. The one that always calmed Jungkook down. But that night, it wasn't enough. Jungkook watched as Jimin naturally drifted back toward Taehyung again. Not out of intention. Not to hurt anyone. Jimin was simply being himself, warm, affectionate, open. And that was exactly what made Jungkook's feelings twist even deeper. He knew Jimin wasn't doing anything wrong. He knew that. But jealousy never follows logic. The live continued. Stories were shared. Laughter filled the room. BTS talked about their days, their small joys, the things that had made them smile lately. Yet Jungkook grew quieter. He nodded more than he spoke. His laughter softened into faint smiles. To ARMY, he might have seemed tired, reserved. No one could see the quiet storm inside him, the way his heart struggled with emotions he couldn't name out loud. At some point, Jimin noticed. He glanced at Jungkook, eyes narrowing just slightly, asking a silent question. Jungkook caught the look and quickly smiled wider, lifting his shoulders as if to say everything was fine. Jimin didn't push. He simply nodded. But after that, something subtly changed. The distance between Jimin and Taehyung shifted. Jimin began glancing at Jungkook more often, turning his body slightly toward the center. Toward him. And Jungkook noticed. He always noticed when it came to Jimin. As the live neared its end, the atmosphere lightened again. Jungkook spoke more, his voice sounding brighter. Yet the jealousy didn't fully disappear. It merely hid itself, waiting for silence. When the live finally ended and the cameras turned off, the world became theirs again. No millions of eyes. No rushing comments. Just 7 people in the same room. Jimin moved toward Jungkook without a word, sitting beside him, his shoulder gently brushing against Jungkook's. A small touch, but full of meaning. "What's wrong?" Jimin asked softly, just loud enough for Jungkook to hear. Jungkook looked down, then shook his head. "Nothing." Jimin smiled faintly, clearly unconvinced. "You seem different." Jungkook took a slow breath. There were so many things he wanted to say, yet none of them came out. Instead, he turned and looked at Jimin, eyes filled with feelings he couldn't explain. Jimin met his gaze, understanding more than Jungkook ever voiced. He leaned in just a little closer, enough to make Jungkook feel like he had found his place again. That jealousy was never truly about Taehyung. It was about Jungkook's fear of losing the quiet moments that only he and Jimin understood. Fear that one day he might no longer be the place Jimin returned to after laughing with someone else. The night ended without confrontation, without confessions, without arguments. Only silence filled with understanding. And beneath it all, Jungkook knew one thing with absolute certainty. The feelings he carried for Jimin were too deep to deny, too real to ignore. Even when jealousy arrived quietly, it only proved one truth. His heart had always been, and would always remain, with Jimin. Hello everyone, thank you for being here with Diorpop. Tonight's story reminds us that some feelings don't need words. They live in silence, in glances, and in hearts that care too deeply to speak. Behind every smile, there is a human emotion, and that is what makes these moments so real. Hello everyone, this is Diorpop. See you in the next story.